Hello and welcome to The Actor and the Engineer. My name is Paul James. I am the actor.
And my name is Josh Knapp. I'm the broadcast engineer.
All right, here we go. Josh, your man is up.
Yeah, it's James Bond. He's like one of my favorite dudes. I'm excited for the end of the Daniel Craig era. And we know this is the end of the Daniel Craig era because Daniel Craig has said multiple times, this is the end of the Daniel Craig era. And in fact, last time when he got done with Spectre, when somebody asked him if he would do another James Bond movie, he said he'd rather slit his wrists than do another one of quote unquote these. So obviously something was good enough for him to come back, and potentially it was the tens of $1 million associated with it too. That probably didn't hurt. But I'm glad to see him back again for this fifth James Bond movie with Daniel Craig and with a bunch of other people that we've seen before. So I was excited to see it. I saw it in the theater the day before my birthday, which was also exciting. And I hadn't been back to the theater in a while. There was like spaced seating and stuff, so that was really nice. And it was a good theater experience. It was nice. How about you?
Yeah, I saw it in the theater. I was the only person in the theater at the time, and it
Wow.
was pleasant. It was nice that I wasn't so worried the whole entire time because they're
Yeah.
not blocking off seats at the
Oh,
AMC where I live. They're not
gotcha.
blocking them off. So it was great. It was a great movie going experience. And spoiler, I thoroughly enjoyed this film. I had a great time. And it might be because of the experience, and it might be because of going back to the theater and having that experience. But I also think that this one was good. This one did its job.
Yeah, I think it did. It's not my most favorite Daniel Craig Bond movie. It's not my favorite Bond movie, and I think that there's other Daniel Craig films that did a lot better. For me, the gold standard is Casino Royale for multiple reasons. We don't necessarily have to get into it, but that's not a minority opinion, I guess. So I'm not like blazing new trail by saying that. But I think that this movie is trying to stay true to a character that was established in Casino Royale. And I think that was probably one of the things that the writers and that Daniel Craig and the producers wanted to make sure that they didn't mess that up. And I think that there's, like with any James Bond movie, there's a bunch of things you can nitpick and there's a bunch of things you can pull apart. But I think all of the pieces are there. And for me, that's why I love Bond movies, is the fact that there's this like history of all these amalgamations of pieces that come together that make a James Bond movie. And this did that. We had all of those various pieces and parts put together. You have a cold open, you have a great theme song, you have gadgets, you have action scenes, you have Bond girls, even though that's kind of a misnomer nowadays, I think, with the way that women are treated in the most recent films. I mean, there's still some egregious, I guess some people would call egregious Bond girls in even in Skyfall, but there seems like they're trying to be aware that it's 2021 and not 1962. I think that if I were to expect a Sean Connery James Bond with the types of Bond girls that were in his films, it would be a bad movie. But that's not what I went into it expecting, and so I went in assuming that I knew what I was going to get, and I pretty much got that. So not a lot of surprises for me. We can get into spoilers later. There's spoilers. I mean, if you're on the internet, you probably know what a lot of them are, but I don't necessarily want to ruin it for anybody in the future. Maybe, I don't know, when it's not kind of like all over the place. How do you think that this movie is going to affect? Well, Marvel just pushed back a lot of their movies by at least 2 months, and some of them a lot longer. Do you think that a week after No Time to Die came out, Marvel pushing back movies is kind of, they looked at this movie and the box office returns of this movie as a harbinger for movies that they are going to put out, since they're similar levels? It's a similar level of film as far as the amount of money that they outlay and the type of money they would expect to get. Do you think that had anything to do with their decision?
I have no idea, to be honest with you. I'm curious, though. I was thinking of this on the way home, along with the movie. Don't get me wrong. It's not, I wasn't thinking the movie. I was. But I'm perplexed by the fact that we're willing to go to restaurants unmasked and also concerts now and football games and all that other stuff, but we're not willing to sit in the theater right now.
This is a 2 hour and 43-minute movie with 20 minutes of trailers at the beginning of it. So when was the last time you had a 3 hour and 10-minute meal?
Yeah, you got a good point. Good point. Good point. And most stadiums are now requiring those COVID requirements, and it is
hmm
outside. And I
It is
think people
outside.
feel,
Yeah.
I feel a little bit more comfortable outside myself. But yeah, that's a good point. But still, when I was walking through the mall going to the theater, there were many people masked and many people unmasked.
Hmm.
Now, a lot of those people were eating. So, of course, you can't have your mask on when you're eating, but everybody who was working in the food court at those places were masked. And that's going to be fun. Anyway, so I'm not sure why people are not coming back, and I'm not sure if Marvel has decided to wait because I don't understand enough about how all that stuff works to actually have an opinion. But I don't know what prolonging something is going to do versus letting it come to the theater and or HBO Max or whatever streaming service. I mean, get your money where you can, and I don't know if they're worried, but I don't know what prolonging it's going to do. Are they waiting for the COVID numbers to come down and
That's the
people to
only thing I
feel
can
more?
think of. Yeah, that's what Bond did, and you could
Yeah.
imagine what the returns would have been in April of 2020 versus now when they made $55 million on the opening weekend. There were no theaters open in April 2020,
Yeah.
and then even if they would have waited until December of 2020 or even this spring, it probably wouldn't. The returns probably wouldn't have been as good. So I don't know if that was. I mean, I'm sure that built in, but at some point they have all this money wrapped up. They have hundreds of millions of dollars, probably $500 million wrapped up in this movie, and they've got to get their money back at some point.
Yeah, and I don't know if there's a business plan for something like this. There will be in the future, obviously, just like on I watch the People's Court sometimes and some of those judge shows, court shows, and they're talking about how new contracts are being written with an act of God or something like a pandemic. They're writing those into contracts now because it caused such a stir that people wanted their deposits back and weren't able to come. And because, of course, a lot of states closed those events down.
Yeah.
And so people are confused about what it is they can do and what they can't do. Because back in the day, if they canceled for some odd reason 2 weeks before the event, they wouldn't get their deposit back. But according to most of the shows that I've watched, and I know that's court TV and a lot of it's not, I'm sure it's legally right, but I'm sure it's also dramatically pushed also.
Sure.
And I don't know if you've ever, side note, I don't know if you've ever read the rules of those shows. It's very interesting. You should read those because it really opens my eyes or opens people's eyes to what's going on. Anyway, so a lot of things are different. So I don't know if they're making plans for 2022 in a different way. And are they expecting COVID to be over with, finger quotes, or are they expecting the numbers to come down or most people to be vaccinated? I don't know. But it's a shame that we can't get control over this situation because it is such a great experience when the lights go down and the popcorn smell and even the sticky floor and the kind of smelly kind of environment. It's still, it brings back all of this sense memory, and it is something to watch light being projected on a screen the size of a building. There's nothing like it, especially with a film like this. That said, it's funny how this film is sort of the opposite of what a James Bond film normally is. Did you want to give him a synopsis of the plot?
Yeah, so a quick plot summary for anybody who, number one, doesn't know who James Bond is, and number two, doesn't know what this movie's about. Guess what? James Bond is retired, and he gets pulled back into service when Felix Leiter, his buddy CIA agent, needs his help, and they're trying to track down this villain who has a biochemical weapon. And so he kind of gets back into it from there. But really, he's supposed to be retired, just like he's supposed to be retired like 4 or 5 times in this in the series of movies that he says that he's retired. But even with Casino Royale, he's supposed to be retired. But anyway, so the cold open starts not on James Bond, which is once again breaking from protocol and breaking from the norm of, oh, we've got a cold open now. Casino Royale did a different cold open because it was a different feel from the rest of the movie, but it was still a cold open that involved James Bond. And there's other cold opens that might set up plots or set up the bad guys, and then James Bond kind of swoops in close to the end. But really, it's not. There's not been anything like this where there's just an out of nowhere flashback, and we get a flashback of Madeline when she's a young girl, and her dad is an assassin. We meet him in all of the first 3 James Bond movies that Daniel Craig is in, Mr. White, and then he's gone, but an assassin comes to kill him, but he's not there, so he tries to kill her and her mom. He's successful in killing her mom, and then tries to kill her, but Madeline ends up shooting him, which all of this is alluded to in previous movies. If you really want to go back, they're really trying to have continuity between Spectre and this film. So yeah, that is also interesting. They didn't have to do that, but they did that. They kind of laid some breadcrumbs that they probably didn't even know they were going to use in Spectre, and they brought them back here. So from there, we move into Italy, which is Madeline and retired James Bond chilling at an amazing villa with an amazing car, obviously with the DB5 from multiple James Bond movies. And then we get into some action when he gets blown up at Vesper Lynd's mausoleum, I guess. I don't know what you call that, a tomb, but it's a bunch of people. Mausoleum. But yeah, there's a bunch of people inside that mausoleum. It's like their ashes, I guess, in there. But yeah, so he feels betrayed. They break up, and then he barely gets away with his life. We also get to see really cool gadgets. I mean, this is the DB5 being used again. Steph and I rewatched Skyfall, and he uses the guns in the original DB5 in Skyfall, but this is a totally different setup where we've got Gatling guns coming out of the headlights. Did you notice that the spent shells are being spit out of the grills on the side of the vehicle? There's these little openings on the side panels of the vehicle, and that's where all of they were in the original DB5, but they're using them as like vents to spit out those spent shells, which I thought was really cool. A great way of retro designing a vehicle to have these features that would benefit a car with a Gatling gun. So yeah, I thought that was really cool. And that seemed to be more like a normal cold open to me, that second half of the cold open.
Yeah.
And then we get what no movie does ever, which is a title sequence. The only movies that do it are James Bond movies. Like, when was the last produced title sequence that you remember from a movie that just none of the Marvel movies do it. They do these sequences at the end for some reason that are very elaborate and CGI heavy, and some of them are amazing and beautiful, but they're never at the beginning of the movie.
Which is really strange because 50 years ago, the credits were at the beginning of the film after the opening sequence, which was always kind of like a catch me if you can type of animation type thing. So yeah, it's been a while since that's been a regular thing, because as soon as you said Marvel films, I was like, wait a second, you're right, they're at the end, and I love those at the end. I love to see the style of the graphics and how Black Widow's symbol is posed and all of that stuff. I love all that stuff. You're right, there isn't but if you didn't have that in a James Bond film, it would be disappointing, because first of all, this sequence, or this whatever you call it,
title
sequence, thank you, is fantastic, because it does what some of them do it well, but this one really gives you an indication where you're going in this film. You know, with the bullet shooting and then the DNA strand and all that. That's really cool. And I was like, okay, obviously there's some kind of bio weapon DNA thing happening here. I was trying to, I've told you this before. I love James Bond movies and I love Mission Impossible, but they don't stick with me as vividly as other films. I don't know why. It's not a thing about the movies. It's not a criticism about the movies. It's just an observation that for whatever reason, my mind is there when I'm there, but afterwards it dissipates. And so connecting the dots from a villain before, or a cold opening that's ending a villain from before, sometimes it takes me a lot to remember what has happened. That said, I don't really remember a title sequence that sets it up so well because I had all of the clues and I didn't know if that was coming from some other movie and I missed those clues. But I was like, yes, I understand what's going on. It's heavy on the symbolism about the plot and less so on what might be considered sexism towards women nowadays. So I think they're doing a really great job of toning down what is traditionally James Bond and then pumping up what they still can use, and still it's just as great. I mean, it's just as great, if not better, because it leads you to, your mind starts spinning. Okay, what's happening here? And then of course you see trailers. So you see Rami Malek's face and you're thinking, okay, is that something to do with the DNA? Is he what's going on with him? Like, how can he be there 20 years ago when she's 5 or whatever, however age Madeline is at the time? And so your mind starts to work, and that's a good thing because the visuals of the title sequence allow you to go, oh yeah, okay, that's what they're, when they start talking about it in the film, which can be a little dense and a little complex. Not just this one, but any James Bond film or Mission Impossible. Sometimes those details are like, wait, what's happening here? And you kind of get an overview, so you're not really left out, but you really have to pay attention. With this title sequence, it was easy to connect the dots later on. So I loved it. I think it's one of the best I've seen.
You're right. They have the ability now, you know, with these more recent title sequences to put more information in there and make it look more visually arresting. But I still enjoy the title sequences from the 60s. Like, I mean, when they were projecting names onto belly dancers in From Russia with Love, like, that's something new that I don't think anybody had ever really seen before. And the belly dancers did tie in later on in the film. There were actual belly dancers in the film, and so that it wasn't out of nowhere, but it also was, you know, you're right, playing up the, you know, the man about town that James Bond is. And so that's what they were going for, and they were successful. But those are still enjoyable title sequences, or the Goldfinger title sequence with the woman all painted in gold. Those are what they could do in camera, but now it's sky's the limit. So you're only limited by what you don't want to show in there and what you want to leave out. And so the amount of restraint necessary is interesting to try to figure out. And I think that there's nods to previous films of title sequences. There's a lot of geometric shapes. There's a lot of spinning things that develop into other things, using water and using fire. Those are big elements in a lot of James Bond title sequences, and they do a great job with this one too. It's the same guy that has been doing the last few, Daniel Kleinman, has done the last, I mean, a bunch of them. I think he did the Casino Royale one. He did the Skyfall one. There's a good pedigree there, but he's kept that going. So I hope he is still in the new ones. I hope he's still involved in the new James Bond films. And maybe that's the other cool thing about James Bond, is that you know that there's always the potential for another James Bond movie, whereas you can't necessarily say that about other series. Like Mission Impossible will end at some point, especially now that we know that Tom Cruise will not allow himself not to be in a Mission Impossible movie. So that is going to stop at some point. And there's so many other franchises that have ended. And I know that, you know, pick your franchise, Star Wars or whatever, but Star Wars, the Skywalker saga part of Star Wars has ended. And so there's things that we know aren't going to be there, and James Bond is going to be there. There's no reason for him not to be there, because the other cool part about this franchise is that from the very beginning, they hadn't even set up conventions until really the third film, until Goldfinger, where there's certain things that they, you know, henchmen, you know, diabolical, megalomaniacal villain. Yes, they had that in the other films, in From Russia with Love and Dr. No, but there's things like henchmen, gadgets. None of that stuff really started until Goldfinger. And so that was a little bit more an establishing movie. But then after that, they still played really fast and loose with all of these things. And fairly early on, within 5 years, they had a brand new James Bond. So everything was thrown out the window. at a certain point, and so there was still this connective tissue, and the fact that they were still successful with those movies is helpful to know that they know that they can take chances. They definitely took chances in this film, big chances, and they're not necessarily the chances that you might have expected when you saw Casino Royale, or when you were seeing like Daniel Craig in the first couple of James Bond movies. But it'll be interesting to see how they move forward with the franchise, because they can go a bunch of different ways with it. So are they going to is every James Bond from now on going to be their own self-contained multi-movie narrative? I don't know. Or are we just going to have kind of like, hey, James Bond's got another mission. All right, where's Q? Where's M? Hey, Moneypenny, let's go. I don't know, but I'm interested.
Well, just to piggyback on something I was saying earlier, we were talking about the cold opening, which I loved, and I loved the kind of downplaying of the big explosive opening. I like that. You don't need to jump off a mountain to jump into a plane and escape to convince us that you're James Bond. And I think that starts happening in Skyfall, where they simplified things and they were doing in-camera effects. And Sam Mendes was like, yeah, it's James Bond. It's going to be big, but I want it to look like it actually happened. In that sequence on the train took forever to film, so forth and so on. And I think that's why this one is sticking with me, because sometimes I believe, and this is a rationalization for what I said about them not sticking with me, but sometimes it's too much. It's so much. It's one explosion after the next. And then, there's that beautiful woman, and then that beautiful woman, and she's connected somehow, but she's helping him, but she's not. And it's just too much sometimes. This one is so stripped down. I don't know, you're an expert, not me, but I think Skyfall is a little bit more simpler in places. But this one, you're expecting in No Time to Die, when he's on that motorcycle, that he has to jump a wall. Either he's going to jump up or jump down, but he has to jump over a wall. You just know it. And when he's on the bridge, you know he's going to have to jump and do his best Batman imitation and grab a hold of that wire. And what sells that is the wire snapping doom, 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 down the bridge. That's what sells that. That not him falling and breaking his own fall. That effect with the wire sells that possible tragedy, because he could have died. Who knew that boom, boom, boom kind of saved his life, because it slowed him down a little bit. I like that. It's simple. It's pared down. It's stripped down to just what you need to know for that moment. And Mausoleum, Columbarium, I'm not sure if those are ashes in there or not, but when that explodes, you're not expecting it, but then when it happens, of course that was what was going to happen. And I love the fact that they're no longer, well, at least seemingly so, he's being affected by whatever explosion is happening to him, because he gets thrown across, and they do that great sound effect where he can't hear
all the audio,
and then he's trying to talk. Yeah, I love all that.
That's kind of a little overplayed now. I mean, I get it, I understand, but it's not as novel as it used to be.
True. But it also shows you that this is a man who should be retired, because this keeps happening to him and he keeps living. And so if he just got up and brushed off his tux and talked in his best Scottish accent, we would be like, okay, it's 1965 again. But you need reality to sell all of the larger than life things. So that said, I think the cold opening with the villain and then the kind of stripped down events in the beginning makes the movie accessible, in my opinion. You're wanting something larger by the end of the film, and boy, do you get it. Yeah. And so I think that added tension to the last sequence, which we of course will talk about later. But I just wanted to make sure that people understood that it wasn't because the film is not good. It's just that sometimes my mind doesn't click in. That said, this film, I remember almost moment to moment, which is unusual for me with one of these films. So I think that speaks to the film and the director.
Well, and there's a lot of signposts in this movie. There's a lot of characters. You can't get away from there being a lot of characters in these James Bond movies. But really, James Bond being unencumbered and starting the movie proper post title sequence, being on his own in Jamaica, and then getting contacted by Felix Leiter, and then moving through that whole, we meet Felix Leiter, the Billy Magnuson character, Logan Ash. We meet him and we meet Nomi, who we later find out is 007, all within the span of 5 minutes of screen time. And so we're meeting each of these people very, very quickly. And well, I mean, we already know Jeffrey Wright. We already know Felix Leiter from previous movies, but it was good to have him back. Good to see him back. But you kind of get pushed forward with number one, new characters, and number two, just waiting to see how he's going to jump into this, because you know he's going to jump in at some point. But if you've seen the trailers and you've read anything online, you kind of knew that Lashana Lynch was going to be Nomi. I don't know when we want to go into spoilers, and I don't know if that's necessarily a spoiler, but very quickly from the time that you meet her, you find out that she's an MI6 agent. And the way that she interacts with him is cute. I can't tell if he knows or if this is kind of like, well, another woman throwing herself at me. You could tell he throws back a bunch of those scotches before he goes into the bedroom. But multiple times throughout this film, he gets rebuffed by women. And that's a little bit of a different look for our James Bond. But the fact that he's older, I guess, maybe that's what they're playing off of. I mean, Daniel Craig still looks good. He's still in shape. So they're trying to run that fine line between he's a debonair woman's man and he's old.
I think they're trying to subvert your ideas of what James Bond is.
And what Bond girls are.
Yeah. Yes. And so when she goes into the bedroom, you expect her to be under the sheets where everything is just covered just properly, and then him down his last drink or offer her another drink, and then the next thing you know, they wake up smoking cigarettes or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that she turns out to be who she turns out to be subverts what you are thinking in your mind's eye. And that's actually a good thing, because I don't think that they're trying to say anything about Daniel Craig being old or not sexy, because he is sexy. And they're not trying to say that they are being demeaning to women. What they're trying to say is that women are more than the sum total of what we have assumed they are in these films up to now, or up to the last 10 years or whatever it's been, that they've been trying to be a little bit better about that kind of stuff. So I think that they are being respectful, and they're allowing you to understand that the world is different now. It's broadened, it's opened, it's something that you're not expecting it to be. So I liked how they did that. I thought it was great. I mean, we've seen stuff like that before in movies. That's not like a surprise. No. And I thought she is coming on a little strong. Like, I didn't trust her, not because I thought she might be an MIA agent or anything like that, but I just didn't. Yeah, like I don't trust anybody in these movies. I won't drink after anybody. I wouldn't walk into a room after. I mean, you just can't trust anybody. So I thought they did a great job with that. I thought they handled that extremely well.
But he gets going pretty quickly into the, propelled into the story, and finding out that there's this Savin guy out there, and he has some chemical weapons that are available, and they're trying to track him down, and that's how he gets involved. But you find out fairly quickly that Rafe finds M is a lot more involved in this situation than you might expect. And so there's a lot of this movie has a lot of like M looking at a computer screen, like M looking at a TV, wanting to know where everybody is and what their vitals are or something. So that's a little difficult. It's a little rough. I mean, Moneypenny's a little bit pushed off to this. I mean, everybody's there. Yeah, I get it. But
she seems like a glorified secretary in this one, which
she was in most of the movies, but
she seems way more important than the other ones. I mean, you actually see her sitting behind her desk, like that's the first thing you see, and then there's just something. She was very powerful in the last couple ones, so this one it's like, and I got the sense of, they just didn't know what else to do with her right now, but we need to see this actress, Naomi Harris. I don't know why I can't say that. Yes, Academy Award nominee. Anyway, We need to see her. We need her in there. They could have figured out something more complex for her to do, like if her and Q had gotten together and worked on something, or I don't know. It seems like a little bit of a waste when you have somebody as talented as her.
There was only that one
Naomi.
scene with
Yeah.
her and Bond going to Q's apartment. That was it. That she's kind of
Well, you see
stepping
her
out.
you see her at the office. She's
No, I
bringing
know,
the
but I just
two
mean
in
like
there.
that was it, like as far as like her contributing to the
Yeah.
mission.
Yeah.
Otherwise it was, essentially her getting coffee, which, not great. So then we end up going to Cuba and meeting Ana de Armas, her character Paloma, which another subversion. He just assumes that she wants to get down and dirty, and she's like, "Oh no, I just need you to change." So I thought that was really good. But that character Paloma is it is a character I have not seen in a James Bond movie before, but it fits right in with, I think, more contemporary movies and characters that I really enjoy in newer movies, where it's someone who's extremely self-aware, and even though she started to come off as like a wet behind the ears type of a character, she was completely confident in what she could and couldn't do, and she pretty much could do whatever she wanted as far as her fighting skills and her skills with weapons and all of that stuff, even though she was kind of a nervous ball of energy beforehand. She wasn't a nervous ball of energy beforehand because she was going to, drop the ball. She was a nervous ball of energy because she was just super excited to get in there and get some action. So, which
because
is cool.
she says in a very excited tone, "Oh, I've been training for 3 weeks." It's not like she's scared, but then when she's walking across the dance floor or wherever, she's like, "I got this. I got this. I've got it under control." Yet again, another, and you said it, subversion of what you're expecting a Bond girl or Bond woman to be. And I like that. I like when somebody is the underdog and you're expecting it to go one way and then it becomes something else. And then she kicks ass and you're like, whoa, I think we need a whole movie with just her. Maybe they should consider her as the next James Bond.
That would be awesome. But as I think that, first of all, there's nothing wrong with, because first of all, Amazon just bought MGM Studios. So James Bond is now owned by a multinational, huge corporation that is much bigger than MGM. And so they can do spinoffs till the cows come home. So they could totally do an Ana de Armas spinoff. It doesn't mean you necessarily have to get rid of James Bond. There's no reason for her to be James Bond because she's not James Bond. She is a different person, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's a name. And they bring that in. Nomi is 007. 007 is an identifier. It's just a code name. It's a number. And so that doesn't, anybody that it rankles is somebody that needs to seriously take a look at their life and figure out, maybe they should be worried about bigger things. But yeah, I don't see any problem with Ana de Armas's character Paloma having her own series of movies. That's totally fine as a spy. But that at the same time, like, there's no reason for her to be James Bond because James Bond isn't the only spy. Mission Impossible, those are great spy movies too, and they have nothing to do with James Bond. So yeah, do your spy stuff. Great, it's awesome. But what's the quote? The Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers. It's like Ginger Rogers did everything Fred Astaire did except for backwards and in heels.
Yep.
That's pretty much what Ana de Armas does in the scene, is that she's just as dexterous, just as capable. It's just she's doing it in this like high cut dress with huge heels on or something. I was like, that's amazing.
And she kind of pulls it off a little bit better than him. He gets a little messed up in that sequence. And she's like, boom, 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 boom. And I did notice she was wearing high heels and she has that very beautiful dress on and she looks fantastic. And I thought, that's going to be interesting. But they handled it so well. And she's so graceful and so confident. And so I was a little disappointed that she's only used for that brief period of time in the film, but also understandable. I mean,
It works for me because it's like you leave them wanting more. I mean, you don't want to
there you go.
outplay
Yep.
your welcome.
Yep.
So yeah,
Yep.
it's perfect because maybe she's a connective tissue with the new James Bond. I don't know, or maybe like I said, they're going to do a spinoff. I don't know, but we leave Cuba and then. Okay, we're definitely getting into spoilers here because the next thing that happens is actually, a big deal. So spoilers from now on. We both really like the movie. Go see it in the theater if you feel safe, and good luck. So then Felix Leiter ends up passing away, and it was one of those things where I was kind of like, I was worried that he was going to drown, and they did the right thing. They had him die before the water took over the underside of the boat. So that was the thing I was most worried about because you could kind of tell that they had it in for him. The writers had it in for him, but they were able to be a little bit more graceful with it. So I was fine with that. Did you know that the Logan Ash character was a bad guy?
Yeah, when he says he smiles a lot, I was like, that's interesting. Something about that just like zinged me when he said he smiles a lot, or he has a big smile. He says something along those lines. And so I wasn't surprised that he turns into a bad guy, but it didn't bother me that it's pretty much, you can feel it out. You can feel it. It's indicated enough. And also, you have these blonde hair, blue eyed, cheesy smiling guys in movies, and they always turn out to be a good guy / bad guy. I mean, they do. They just do. And he looks, I don't know, he just looks like he has greasy hair. And I know he doesn't. And I like that actor, by the way. What's his name? Billy Magnuson?
Billy Magnuson, yeah.
Yeah, I like him a lot. He just seems like that guy at the bar who just gets a little too drunk and he just hits on everybody, and it's like, oh, dude, don't lean on me. Like, he's that guy who man spreads on the subway and doesn't get up for the woman when she needs to sit. I mean, he's that guy. And so I don't know. I don't trust guys who come across like he did in the beginning of the film. So I wasn't surprised at all that he turns.
Would you consider him a henchman? Because like I don't think I'd consider him a henchman. And this movie is woefully lacking in henchmen. We have one, and he's not even that cool. It was kind of a downer. I was kind of I liked the henchman in Spectre, the Dave Bautista henchman, where he was like crushing people's skulls. Like,
right,
that's a henchman. Like, and it's not even. I mean, it's essentially like a play off of Jaws / Odd Job, but but at least it's calling back to that. This guy was just like a guy who was missing an eye. I mean, that's it.
Oh yeah.
But that's not. I don't know. It's not as sexy as Jaws. So, and Jaws was cheesy, but Jaws was still kind of like they're going for it. With a henchman like Jaws, they're going for it. But this one they were very measured, and they're like, we're gonna allow this guy to just have a camera in his eye. Great, thanks.
I think the difference is, and I don't know that actor's name with the eye. I think the difference is if you saw that guy walking down the road, you might just walk past him. But if you saw Jaws or Dave Bautista walking down the road, you cross to the other side and just be like, nope, I don't know why, but I don't trust you because you look like a henchman in a James Bond film. So I would like to stay on this side because if anything's going to explode, maybe I'll get out of the way of the collateral damage. But so no, but in a way, the opposite is what's happening in most of this film, the opposite of what you're expecting. So in a way, that's kind of the opposite of what you're expecting. You're kind of expecting somebody charismatic or brings on the heat when it comes to being the bad guy who does everything, the henchman, that's the term. So maybe that's kind of good that they went the opposite of what you were expecting. I think the guy...
His name's Dali Ben Salah. And the character, they call him Primo, but then in parentheses it says Cyclops.
Right.
Okay.
Which is a cool effect, and the whole Christoph Waltz watching is a cool effect. And
the fact that Christoph Waltz is missing an eye, too.
Yeah,
that ties in.
Yeah, totally. I get that. Yeah, he did nothing to hurt the film for me. I mean, his lacklusterness as a henchman, He did. He served his purpose. You knew exactly who he was, and you knew exactly what he was going to do, and you knew exactly why he was doing it. And I'm fine with that. You know what I mean?
Mm.
I'm fine with that. There is always somebody like that in one of these films, not necessarily a James Bond film, but an action film. So,
Yeah.
would it have been better to like cast somebody more physically haunting? Maybe. Or cast the polar opposite of what you're expecting.
They kind of did that in Quantum of Solace, where there's a guy named Elvis, and he had like the bowl haircut, and he was just like incompetent. They did go the other way at some point even in the Craig James Bonds, but
I guess I'm more expecting that, right? That's a character flip. What I'm expecting is somebody who is, you know that he is dangerous, but yet he could walk into a room, like I said, and you're not going to be scared of him. And then he pulls out all the stops.
so
I
like
think the
Rosa
fact that-
Klebb from Russia with Love, she pops her shoe and a knife comes
yeah,
out.
yeah,
She's
Yeah,
she'll
yes.
stab you.
Yes. Or that the eye does something more significant than it does. Well, I mean, other than what it does do. And maybe if he had some new kind of gadgets or something, which he sort of does, kind of. Not really, but I think it's what they gave him to do more than it was the actor or the charisma of the character.
Yeah. So how about Blofeld? Christoph Waltz probably made, what do you think, $10 million or something for a scene in the movie. But yeah, that was kind of, he did a good job. I'm here for megalomaniacal Christoph Waltz. I like it. But I think that his character in this movie is actually better than his character in Spectre, even though it's the same character. But I did like him in this concentrated form, and it felt right. His portrayal, that where he was at, and just the fact that how he died, and that it wasn't Madeline that did it, but it was James Bond that did it, even though he didn't necessarily want that. He did want that to be the outcome, but he didn't know that was going to be the outcome. I thought it was very neat and tidy the way that Blofeld was taken out.
Well, it serves a purpose.
Yeah.
It reminds you of this character. It reminds you of the significance of this character, but really that character's in the movie to die the way that he died. So you can know that these nanobites or nanobits or whatever they're called, nanobots, bits, bytes, bots. Say that 5 times. That's the purpose of that scene. And the purpose of the scene also is to let you know that once they're in you, they're in you. And that only his DNA could have been affected, and only by
touching him.
And that it will be in James Bond's body forever, which...
That'll come back later.
Yeah, that doesn't... Yeah, you're right. So I think that's the reason. And Christoph Waltz has 2 Oscars, and he always brings it. So if he got paid $10 million, fine. I just hope that the people who really did a lot, and I'm not saying Christoph Waltz didn't do a lot, because, I don't know what his prep and his situation is when it comes to an actor. It might be really difficult. He could just show up and know the lines. Who knows? But I just hope they paid people equally. That's my only thing about having an actor come back as big as he is, and as important as he is, and as brilliant as he is. Then if you are paying him $10 million, then
I'm just, it's
I
probably
know.
less
I know what
than
you're
that,
saying.
but still,
I know what
you
you're
can
saying,
imagine that he didn't come back for free. So, he gets dispatched fairly quickly. And this is also the first time that James Bond sees Madeline after 5 years. So that's a kind of a weird, awkward meeting there that they have. But in this whole time, I think I don't know exactly when it was, but I think I might have looked down on my watch when we meet Lucifer Safin, which is Rami Malek's character, which when you look at it, it kind of looks like Lucifer Satan. So that's an interesting little thing there. I don't know if
sounds like that too when you say it, actually.
Yeah,
I think it sounds like that.
I don't know if they're alluding to that, but I mean, I could see that. And so, it takes a while. I mean, I know he's in the pre-credit sequence, the flashback, but you don't really see him, and he never talks. But that's the first time we see Rami Malek's character, is in only a handful of scenes really until the very end. But what did you think of his Bond villain-ness. I mean, he's not as physically imposing as a Goldfinger or, Telly Savalas' Blofeld, but
Thus, the reason why you have to pick up a 5-year-old child and use them as
mm,
a shield or a defense. So, no, I thought he was good. I think that he found his calling. I think he should be a Bond villain from this point on. No, I had no problem with him. I thought he was what you needed him to be. He had to be a thinker, not a
brute.
muscle brute. Right. I was going to say brutish. He had to be a thinker because look what he put together. What he put together has to do with chemicals and DNA and just stuff I can't even really think about, let alone talk about, let alone understand. So, him not being this crazy, over the top, larger than life, larger than scale life character made sense to me. I'm not exactly sure why was he wearing that mask? What connected it? What gave you
I think it's because his face was damaged by the chemical that when he was a kid, when he was poisoned as a kid, and his whole family was poisoned, and he was the only one who was alive. His body was changed, his face was changed, and he was probably ashamed of how his face looked and wanted to cover it
right?
up.
I get that. I get that. So where is this character from?
I don't know where he's from.
Okay, well, he's obviously not from the place where the mask originates. So what I'm saying is, I understand the practical reason why he's wearing it, and it's a very cool looking mask, and it's a very cool thing that happens in the beginning where it shatters, and then you see the side of his face. You don't really get an understanding fully of the scars, but they're there. But I wish they had connected the dots with why that was the mask he picked, because he could have picked anything. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
what was the reason behind that? And maybe that's something they cut out after 2 hours and 45 minutes. I have no idea. Maybe there's some kind of backstory that you decided to not. But to me, it's very specific, that mask. So you have to explain it to me why he chose that very specific mask.
Hmm.
Not why he's wearing it. That's obvious.
Oh,
But
okay.
why he chose that. That's
Yeah.
all. Other than that, I was happy for him because a lot of people have been questioning where Rami Malek's place is in Hollywood
Hmm.
because that Denzel Washington movie he was in with Jared Leto, it's an odd film and he doesn't, according to a lot of things that I read, doesn't quite fit right in that part. And a lot of people are now questioning, well, yeah, he was great as
Freddie Mercury.
Freddie Mercury, and he's been great in a lot of different things that he's done, but he has a very specific type and look. So where does he go? And I'm not saying, I was being facetious when I was saying he could be a James Bond villain for the rest of the movie, but I think that his niche is very specifically drawn characters.
Yeah.
He can't be the everyday guy. He can't just be the lawyer in the courtroom. He has to be somebody specific with a dialect, which he pulls off. I thought he was menacing and I was afraid of him. So I think that's all you need in a James Bond film.
All right. You were talking about the little things, the Denzel Washington. Yeah. That movie, see, I think right from the beginning, that movie, I tried to watch it. It was difficult. I didn't get through it. But I think it had a lot going against it. Are you okay over there?
I almost did a spit take.
I
I
think
just
it had
love how you're just like, you say it, you're in, you're out.
That's it. But it had a lot going against it. It was written in the early 90s and nothing changed in the script and they just made the movie. And so there's a lot that's changed in movies now. And I'm not saying that movie shouldn't have been made, but it's interesting that they didn't necessarily feel like revisiting it before putting it on film. So that I thought was interesting, an interesting choice. We didn't talk about the theme song. We kind of skipped past it. Do you like the theme song? Do you care about theme songs?
I do, and I liked it, and I like Billie Eilish. I like her tone. I like the kind of growlish grumbling she does. I like that. I like her bravado. I like the way her notes are subtle, but yet she holds on to them. That said, I think we need more, and I know you don't like the Golden Eye song as much, But I think we need more of that and less of the crooning thing that we've been getting recently,
Yeah.
because all of them have been
Yeah.
introspective and.
Have you listened to
Ugh,
Radiohead's Spectre?
no.
They wrote a song for the movie Spectre called Spectre, and I think it's better than the Sam Smith song that won the Academy Award for Best Song.
Yeah.
I think it is better than the Sam Smith song. I mean, here's the thing. So Adele writes Skyfall, she wins an Academy Award, and then everybody's probably like, we probably should do that again. And so it's worked. I think that it won some awards. I think that No Time to Die won some awards last year. It might have even won the Grammy because it came out last year. It came out last March. Yeah, she totally won a Grammy for Best Song for Visual Media. So yeah, that was last year. So that's already happened. So she's already winning awards, and she would be eligible for an Academy Award next year.
Actually, I just looked it up because I was like, how many James Bond songs have won the Oscar? And it's just Skyfall and
Yep.
Sam Smith song.
That's right. And that's 2 in a row as far as James Bond movies are concerned. So
Right.
that right there is probably why people are, wanting to go back to the well. But I appreciate the Billie Eilish song much more than I appreciate the Sam Smith song. Nothing against him. I just, like I said, I feel like there's more to grab onto in this song. And it's hard to compete with Adele. I can't imagine that anybody would want to necessarily quote unquote compete with Adele. But yeah, you're right though. I think that it would be interesting to push in a different way. Jack White and Alicia Keys tried to do that, and I'm a huge Jack White fan. I'm a huge White Stripes fan, and all of his other side projects, but it didn't fit as well for me as a James Bond song as some of the previous James Bond songs. There's no right answer, but it would be interesting to see what else we can come up with.
That said, I'm going to contradict what I just said. I think the song serves this film well. The downplaying of things in this movie until almost the end, everything is kind of downplayed. We were talking about the opening sequence. It's not as jazzed up. It's not as much on speed as most of the openings are. And I think that the song does the same thing. So I think if you had a theme song where No Time to Die was, of course, in there, and if it was like this bombastic chorus, then I think you're going against the grain with this movie. That doesn't change my thing about we need a little bit more.
Yeah, something. Yeah.
Something a little bit
what's funny
more.
though is that this movie is a movie about a dad getting his daughter's rabbit. So, really when you think about it, it's a very soft movie compared to other James Bond movies.
Yeah, I like that though.
It's you would never say that about any other James Bond movie. So it's a different feel from other James Bond movies, but
it seems to
it's still a
make
James
sense.
Bond movie.
Yeah, it makes sense with where you're going with it, where the film is going. It
Yeah.
makes sense. But I do miss like Duran Duran's View to a
There you
Break
go.
or What View to a Kill, and I,
Mhm.
Live and Let
Or
Die.
Live and Let Die.
I mean,
Come on. Yeah.
yeah, I
Even
mean,
the
that's
current
just
Casino Royale song, it was great.
which I don't know. I don't know that
Oh
song.
man, it's great. Well, the cool part about that is that they integrated that song, so they had a really they made a rule for themselves. They said, we are not going to do the James Bond theme in this movie until the very end. They alluded to it in some, like in the score a little bit, but really what they did was they took that song, You Know My Name. That's what it's called. And they took that song and they took the chord structure of that song, and David Arnold, the composer, wove that into the score. And so whenever there would be something that you would expect there to be like a flourish, some sort of a James Bond theme flourish in the score, they would use the Chris Cornell song and a modification of that to give you that same flourish and that same feeling. It's just they weren't leaning on the James Bond theme. And so because of that, the song actually integrates really tightly into the film. And I can't think of Casino Royale without thinking of the theme song. And that's a successful theme song.
Yeah.
you just can't get away from it. And really, Skyfall is a successful theme song because its chord changes lean so heavy on the James Bond theme chord changes. So, and No Time to Die is very similar too. They're kind of alluding to the James Bond theme without it really being the James Bond theme. And so
which is sort of like
it's perfect.
This whole movie.
Yeah.
This whole movie. I asked you before, I think last week, before I saw the film, if he does the Bond, James Bond. You were like, yeah, he does. And you were a little uncertain, but he does.
He does.
In the best possible way, because you're not expecting it, and it's kind of tongue in cheek, and it's kind of Daniel Craig's reaction is brilliant because it's like, dude,
come on,
everybody knows me, and it's such a basic thing that he's doing that everybody has to do. And so when it happens, I was like, "Ha, that's brilliant!" Because it could not. I don't know if you could pull it off like, you know, Sean Connery or even Roger Moore did. I don't know if you could pull it off anymore like that. And I don't know if you would want it to be done. I'm sure Daniel Craig could do it, but it was really clever. It was just, I mean, it was exactly what you're expecting from this movie up to this point. It subverts what you're expecting it to happen, because I thought it was going to happen in the bar.
In that scene with Paloma, we do get, for the first time, we get him asking for a martini, shaken, not stirred. And there's all these little journeys that started in Casino Royale and are now ending in No Time to Die. So it starts off with, in Casino Royale, you know, him saying, I'll have a martini. And the guy's shaking her shirt. And he's like, do I look like I give a damn? And now we get to the point where he's like, yes, shaken, not stirred. It's so great. And it evolves over the movies. But there's all these little things, as far as whether it's gadgets, where they didn't have any gadgets in the first movie, and now we have a DB5 that has little rolly, explodey things coming out of it, and the Gatling guns.
Awesome.
And
I love that.
And he's got the watch. You know, he has a watch that has it doesn't have a garrote in it, but it's got an electromagnetic pulse, and so it's the stuff where you're just like, yes, this is not the first time, but it's hearkening back to previous James Bonds, and it's not precious with it, but it also is honoring what's come before it. So it's just enough. It's like chef's kiss. I like it.
I agree.
All right, so I do want to at least talk about the Bond cars a little bit. There's a bunch of Aston Martin cars, and I loved all of them, but there's a lot of Land Rover cars. And when I was watching with Steph has this thing for old Jeeps, and that the old Land Rover he had when he was in Jamaica with the tire on the top, like the wheel on the top. Yeah. She was like, I want one of those. And I'm like, yeah, we can't afford that. Like, those are vintage cars that are really cool. And it's also right side drive too. So that would be weird. But yeah, all those. Did you see that special supercar in the wind tunnel that they never drove?
Oh yeah.
They just never drove it. I mean, but it was there, so I don't know why. But
I assumed they were leaving that for the future. I assumed it's gonna be called back. You're gonna come into that place again, and
well, that brings up a whole nother. We need to side table that discussion because we don't know what the future is. Like, we just don't know. But so we got the DB5. That car was called the Valhalla, but we got the DB5, a bunch of Range Rovers, and then the V8 Vantage, which is like the Aston Martin that he drives when he goes to see Madeline. That was a really cool car too. It really reminded me of a 70s Mustang, but it's an Aston Martin. So, and that was in Living Daylights, I think. I think that was in one of the Timothy Dalton movies. And it was brand new then, but now it's obviously a classic car from the 80s. But yeah, I thought it was, the cars were on point. The cars were really cool. And it wasn't anything that was too outlandish, but it just worked. The only kind of like outlandish gadget that he had was that the glider that they used, that him and Nomi used.
Turned into a...
Yeah, they turned into a submarine. Oh my gosh.
Something has to turn into a sub.
No, you need a vehicle that's two things. That's what you need.
Right. Yeah, but going underwater is pretty much what it needs to do. I
Yeah.
mean, he says something about landing it or something, and she's like, yeah, no.
No.
She's like, yeah. And then they go over water. I was like, of course they're going under the water. Of course. Yeah, that was cool. That
Yeah.
was
Oh,
that was
man.
neat.
But yeah, and that kind of harkens back to the in From Russia with Love. There's the helicopter that they built that Q brings in multiple suitcases, and they build it, and he flies the
Oh, yeah.
helicopter around the little Jenny or whatever it was called, and then in The World Is Not Enough, he's in this like little rocket boat that ends up going underwater, and it's yeah. So there's a lot of kind of like callbacks to different things that you get with that glider situation. So yeah, that was really cool. But then I mean, pretty much when we get to the evil dude's lair, which that's in Denmark. Like there's these chains of islands. It reminded me of where Luke Skywalker was in the episode 7, at the end of episode 7, and those are all kind of like Scottish islands, but this is kind of close, like in between England and the Scandinavian peninsula, and it's these islands called the Faroes, and they faked a bunch of stuff obviously, but then they also had the island to kind of build around. But they get in there, and when Madeline said that her daughter was not his, did you think that it wasn't his?
No, I thought it was his.
That was
but I didn't
clunky
understand.
to me. That I don't understand.
Yeah, I didn't
so
understand
why
why
are they
they did it.
delaying? Yeah, why are they delaying that fact?
I mean, she looks just like it. And she's 5 years old.
Yeah.
It's not
Come
hard
on.
to. Yeah, I don't understand why they even bothered.
Yeah.
Why did they even? I mean, what was you have to answer the question why she did that. I mean, as soon as you see the little girl, you're like, okay, this is a callback to the opening sequence. I get that. But then you see her eyes and you're like, wait.
Those are really blue.
Wait. And her hair's ashy blonde. And it's like, yeah. So why even bother?
I don't know. And we actually haven't talked about how this movie looks, but this is a perfect scene when he meets his daughter. This is a perfect scene to kind of bring up Cary Joji Fukunaga, who we haven't talked about at all, really. But in some ways, maybe it's a good thing that we're not like bringing out the fact that whatever, this shot was weird or this looked out of place, because this is a guy doing the 25th version of this character, and he's been able to integrate into all those previous versions, but then also make it his own. This movie was very painterly to me. Like there were a lot of scenes, and that scene in particular, he did a lot of golden hour type stuff. And there's a lot of like, beams of light coming in through, just like these like warm orange beams of light coming in through, especially at that lake house, that you're not expecting to see in a James Bond movie. You're expecting to see that in a Terrence Malick movie. But to me, it was like, oh, this is a little out of place, but it's not, because this movie feels different than other James Bond movies, as far as we're spending way more time directly with his emotions instead of indirectly, where it's like, oh, I'll pour another vodka martini. It's not it's not like, we're not going to deal with that. It's not, him on the plane just getting hammered in Casino Royale. So that, I think it warrants these types of shots, and this somewhat of a departure from what you would expect of those. Although, like in Skyfall, we just watched Skyfall, and there's some like really rich scenes in Macau.
Yeah, Sam. Yeah, is that the end?
That's when he goes to the casino with a Moneypenny.
Oh, I don't know. Sam Mendes pretty much blew that out of the water, because that whole sequence, and I believe, forgive me if I'm wrong, doesn't that end in that kind of like stone rock house thing where they're hiding out? Him and M are hiding out.
Well, yeah, that's it. Skyfall.
Yeah.
That's where it's called. Skyfall. Yeah, it's a Scottish castle kind of thing. Yeah.
Oh yeah, duh. See, I do things like that. I don't like when I do things like that, because I just was like Captain Obvious. But anyway, so I think that if it wasn't for the movie Skyfall, I might find it jarring to see those beams of light, or that kind of ashy, gray, brownish tones that Cary Fukunaga does. because if you track him back, it's all over True Detective. I
Yeah.
mean, it's all over it. It's all over Beast of No
Beast of
Nation.
No Nation,
It's all, yeah. So it's all over his films. So why change your style? Because that's what you were, or why change your DP, or why change the look of your film if that's what you do? Because you're being hired to interject your thing onto this world. So it makes sense, and I liked it, and it never pulled me out. And it's beautiful, especially in the beginning when you go across the snow, and then it's beautiful when you finally go back when it's whatever, springtime or summer, whenever you first see the young girl. So yeah, I thought it was beautiful, and I thought he did a great job.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and also just you go from that kind of warm feeling to the brutalism of the final setup. I mean, it's just like concrete and everything. And, Denis Villeneuve and Blade Runner 2049 did not do this movie a good service, because it looked super similar to Jared Leto's Lair in Denis Villeneuve's
I thought the
2049.
exact same thing.
Now, one big difference is that Jared Leto's Lair was all made with wood, which is
Wood,
like
and this
super
is stone.
expensive, and nobody
Right.
has it, and I get
Right.
that. And this was all concrete, and so there's a difference, but at the same time, like the trapezoidal angular feel,
yeah.
you're just kind of like
100%.
yeah. And I know it's a repurposed USSR nuclear launch site, so I get that, and I understand that they're kind of going into that. But some of the style choices made in there, like they really tried to make it look like a villain lair by having all those fluorescent tubes in the water, and the people. I don't know what the people were doing. That's where I kind of started to scratch my head. It's like, are these people collecting acid? I don't know what they're doing down there with all those lights in that kind of trough of water that one guy falls into accidentally and just gets eaten up into acid. So I don't know, but it's a striking image.
I agree with you, because you don't need to know specifically what they're doing up to that point, because you're like, wait, that plastic biosuit has stopped them from burning, and
Yeah.
no one has accidentally dropped the glove or scratched their face and their hand goes into the thing. Nobody knows that's going to happen. It's a bit of a big sell at that point,
Yeah.
because you really need to have bought into that. I don't know why it wasn't just certain parts of the tank that were, and then you could have the people in the bio suits checking things, and you see things bubbling in it. And
Yeah.
then
It's very Dr.
don't-
No, actually. It's
Right. Yeah,
very
absolutely.
similar.
yeah. So yeah, I didn't quite understand why. And then they all spread out. Like they don't already know that.
Yeah.
It didn't make much sense, but it is a cool effect, and it is a cool way. Strangely, I'm going to say this. It's a cool way to see somebody die in a film. So, I mean,
Yeah.
it's terrible to say it like that, but you
still
know,
kind of cool.
for an action film, James Bond type thing, it
Yep.
what you're needing something like that to sell the danger of that place because of how it ends. So
Yeah.
I was okay with it.
So, and I don't talk about costume very much. I think it's an integral part of movies, and we probably don't spend as much time or energy dissecting it as we should. But the way that they dealt with James Bond's attire in this final battle sequence, where he has this like sweater on, and like a white shirt underneath it, and then when he sends Madeline and their daughter away, he takes off his sweater, which we've seen him in for a portion of the battle of the final fight. He takes that off, and then he has like another shirt with like suspenders on, which I don't know if, I guess we have seen James Bond in suspenders, but he's been in like dress clothes or something. But that's, I mean, the crazy part is like there's a whole James Bond. I was looking for James Bond gadgets. Like I just typed in Google James Bond gadgets. There's a website that tells you exactly every piece of clothing that Daniel Craig has worn as James Bond on screen, and where you can buy it and how much it is. And
Of course there
like
is.
down to the sunglasses. And
Of
just like,
course there is.
so I didn't know that was a whole thing, but the fact that there, and also that James Bond is involved. He was co-producer of the last two films, and he's involved in the decision, like I mean, they have a costume designer, obviously, but he's involved in the decisions of what he's going to wear and all that stuff.
Did he choose that skimpy shirt and those skimpy shorts that he wears coming off of that dock? I was like, hello, what's going on with that? I mean, was that okay? All right, we're
well,
dealing
also
with
he
it. We're
probably
dealing-
hasn't eaten a piece of cake in like 20 years. So, you know, I can I
Yeah,
feel
no, I don't
for the
blame him.
guy.
Yeah, I don't blame him. Hey, by the way, I wanted to mention Linus Sandgren.
Mhm.
Sandgren, Sandgren, is the DP. Do you know his bio?
That's Damien Chazelle's dude.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
First
This
Man.
film, First Man, very good. Battle of the Sexes, La La Land, Joy,
Yep.
American Hustle. He's done a couple of David O. Russell. So yeah,
Mhm.
this guy's got something going on right here. I
Yep.
just wanted to mention that because
That's good.
when I
yeah.
saw his bio, I was like, whoa. It is Linus though, right?
I think it's Linus, but it's
Is it?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
But I think he met Damien Chazelle in film school, and they've been, you know, buddy ever since.
He did win the Oscar for La La Land. Yeah, he sure did. As well, he should have.
Yep. Yeah.
That film is beautiful.
It is beautiful.
All right.
I'm glad we're giving props to you know, people whose last name isn't Craig and or Fukunaga.
Didn't wear
But-
skimpy shorts.
so yeah,
Understood.
I mean, basically by the end of the film, I kind of thought that he would die, but that's the part that kind of, it doesn't bug me. It just seems, it didn't resonate with me emotionally, which is bad. And I know a lot of people, just listening to other podcasts and just, you know, reading stuff, you know, a lot of people are like, oh yeah, it got real misty in the theater for me, and you know, like I could really feel this. For me, it just, there were too many logistical clear other options in for that situation. But that part kind of brought me away from this cathartic ending or this satisfying, you know, this is the end of Daniel Craig's James Bond.
Okay, so I have two questions. What's the last movie you did get misty in?
James Bond movie?
No, movie.
I'm not a sociopath. I do.
You're so defensive. I didn't mean it like that. I meant it like you're just not that person who, like, I didn't mean that you don't have any empathy or feeling towards human beings at all. That's not what I meant.
Okay.
I meant that some people are
No,
misty
it's-
people and some
yeah.
people aren't.
Oh,
and it's
I'm a
not
misty
bad
person.
thing.
I'm a misty person. I mean, the one that I can clearly remember, and it was a couple years ago, was A Star Is Born. Like that, anything that involves music and emotion, like I'm a sucker for that stuff. I can't handle it like emotionally.
And I do want to point out that was a couple years ago. So
It was,
okay.
but
just saying.
there's been other movies that I mean, like I said, I'm thinking of movies in the theater, but there's been other films that I've gotten.
Well, you don't mention it that often, so that's why
Well, I've got
I was
a
going
rep
down
I gotta
that.
protect, you know, like I'm a.
Yeah, I don't, so I don't care. I cry at everything, and I stopped myself from crying. I was like, I am not crying at a James Bond film. I've had a
Out of
very emotional
principle.
2 weeks. I have cried at everything in the last 2 weeks. I'm working on these new monologues. I'm crying. I watch this show called Looking. I'm crying. I watch it again. I cry again. I'm not crying at a James Bond film, but I did get misty. I did tear up, and I did think it was a good way to end it all for Daniel Craig. But my second question is, tell me one of those things at the end that you thought could have happened that hindered the emotional impact of the ending for you. You're saying that logistically something else could have
So
happened.
they could have exploded the missiles in midair. They could have disabled those missiles. Now the whole reason to blow this thing up is because there's a bunch of ships coming in, and the ships were going to ostensibly take this product that's been produced. But if they close all the bay doors like he did, then there's no way to get in. There's no way for these ships to get the materials that they're supposed to get. So then blow up those missiles, get a helicopter to pick up James Bond, have him fly out to the island right next to him, and then fire some more missiles. There's a bunch of different options. And it wasn't that it was logistically, it wasn't like, oh, we don't want to spend the money on more missiles. It wasn't that. It wasn't that there were no other issues, no other impediments other than the fact that he was going to have to live the rest of his life not being able to touch his girlfriend and his daughter. So that is something he was not willing to live through.
I don't know. I bought it. Hook,
Okay.
line, and sinker. I thought it was, the stakes were high enough. The possibilities of if it didn't happen that way were drastic. And I thought that on the scale of what was important, yes, it was important that he couldn't touch his daughter or his girlfriend. By the way, she's too young for him, just as a side note. She's too young for him. We need to get
Leah
better with-
Seydoux. Yeah.
Yeah, she's great. She's wonderful. And she's beautiful. But we got to get rid of the 25-year gap. That's too much. Or we need to balance the equation and make females older and males younger and do it that way
Hey,
too.
But
And,
if you
and be
look
okay
at,
with that.
if you look at Helen Mirren, though, like I'm sure there's a lot of 30-year-old guys who would want to go out with Helen Mirren.
Then let's see it.
Yeah.
Then
Yeah.
put it up there.
Totally.
Then make her the next James Bond and put it up there. Then I'll be okay with it.
She'd break a hip, though.
You're so wrong. You were in such a good level there, and then boom, you blew it up. Logistically speaking, I think you could have done something different there than blowing all that up. But,
Yeah, I
but
gotcha.
anyway, I
Okay.
just think I think that it's an ode to the movie-going audience who loves Daniel Craig as James Bond. It's a conclusion they cannot do anything about. It's not like he mysteriously gets beamed up to the Star Trek Enterprise and then shows up in the next film. There's nothing they can do. And it's dramatic, and you actually see him blow up. I mean, you don't really see him, but the shot is on the back of him, and then
yeah.
the bombs explode, and you know there's no getting out of it.
There's
and
no
I
getting
think
out
that
of
was
it.
brave. And I think have they killed a James Bond before?
No,
Have
of course not.
Right. I think for that reason and only that reason, I think it's brilliant.
That's a low bar.
To you, who is emotionally, not misty, but emotionally invested in this franchise, that's the word I was looking for
Okay.
a moment
Franchise.
ago.
Okay.
But to somebody who's going to see a movie who is standing outside of the knowledge of the whole world and always bringing the whole world with you, it's a really good way. And knowing that Daniel Craig has stated over and over again, he's not doing it, and 100%. And I avoided everything on social media. I avoided everything about this film, even before we determined we were going to talk about it, because I just don't like to know. And they kept saying the reason why Daniel Craig is definitely over with it. I was like, I don't want to know a thing.
Yeah.
And it never dawned on me that that would be the reason why. And then we get the whole cast at the end. They're all coming together to have their
Yep.
last drink for James. I like it.
No,
I'm
no.
a sucker
That part's
for
good.
that stuff.
That part's good. And
But
but
it wouldn't happen if he lived.
Oh, that's true. But there's something about just we know that the problem is we know there's no stakes. There's no stakes for killing James Bond. Because at the end of the movie, after all the credits roll, what does it say? James Bond will return. Because James Bond always returns. Because it's fiscally responsible for James Bond to return. People put their kids in college because James Bond returns. So
Odd way of looking at it. But okay.
and
I
I'm
can
there for
appreciate
it. I'll be there opening night.
But let me ask you this. So you're saying that Timothy Dalton, Pierce Brosnan, Roger Moore, Sean Connery, and Daniel Craig are all the same person, just played by a different.
No,
all the
that's the
same-
thing. So that's the thing. I have no problem with there being ambiguity with whether there's continuity or not in the James Bond universe. You forgot George Lazenby, but famously George
Sorry,
Lazenby.
I knew there was one.
Well, he was only in one movie, but
Right. And I knew that's the guy I was going to forget too.
in On Her Majesty's Secret Service, he beats up a guy on the beach and he throws him into the water or whatever. And then he like turns to the camera and said, the last guy didn't have this many problems. Something like that. So number one, it's a direct address to the camera. Ugh, horrible. Number two, it's him commenting. It's like a meta commentary on the James Bond franchise, on the fact that there's two people playing the same person. Like it's that you're in a movie. Like it's weird. It's super weird. But that whole barrier was broken back in 1968 or 1969 or whenever it came out. So I don't have a problem with that. That's part of the James Bond canon. I don't have a problem. It already happened, but there's not like, we're not like blazing new, I don't feel like you're blazing new trails by killing James Bond. I think that it's a logical way to end Daniel Craig as James Bond, which is fine. But also him literally driving off into the sunset is another way to end his time as James Bond. I would have no problem with that. It would be great to have him have a happy ending after all that he's gone
I just
through.
like the idea of sitting in the writer's room and somebody said, you know, we should kill him at the end. He should die. And people go, what? We can't kill James Bond. And I'm thinking that's exactly why I would give it the green light, because you're saying you can't or you shouldn't.
Everybody was assuming that the reason why Danny Boyle and Eon Productions parted ways, because he was supposed to direct this movie, they assumed that the reason why he parted ways is because he wanted to kill James Bond. But I'm wondering if he didn't want to kill James Bond. And it sounds like Daniel Craig and Barbara Broccoli and Michael G. Wilson, who are, kind of like the half son and daughter of the producers, Cubby Broccoli, that they probably wanted that to happen. And if Danny Boyle wasn't on board, then they were like, we got to find somebody else. So they did. And I mean,
Well, they have to reinvent this franchise. They have to reinvent this character.
Okay. So who's it going to be next?
I think it should be his daughter in 15 years.
And her name's James.
Well,
there are
a lot of
women named James.
Yes, there are.
In fact, Roger Deakins' wife's name is James.
And there is a man named Carol and a man named Sandy and a man named Alice. So that's insignificant to me. We don't know do we know what the little girl's middle name is? Maybe her middle name is James. Maybe she takes on the mantle of her father because of not getting to know him and all that stuff because she's clearly going to remember this. She's 5. It's not like she's 2. She's going to remember this. And obviously it's also a good setup because this is what happened to her mother when she was 5 or 6 and something traumatic, so forth and so on. And they can mirror each other because the mother became, then again, maybe she should become the bad guy in the next one because the mother becomes good even though her father was bad and an assassin, and that's why Rami Malek's coming to kill him. So
is this a James Bond movie then? Like because the cool part is that of over 5 movies we get an interpretation of a previously established character and all the little tropes and trinkets associated with that character. So this new thing, would it be one of those things where it's like by the end of this person's run as the character of James Bond, do you feel like we would still get that thing? Do you feel like they're already done with building up a character and hearkening back to previous movies? Because I'll tell you, at the end of Skyfall, when James Bond walks into MI6, opens up the door, says hello to Moneypenny, and then opens that leather-bound applique door and walks in there, and he says, hello, M. And then M says, are you ready to get to work? It's just kind of like we've gone 3 movies, and we're now to the point where he is where he was in Dr. No, at the beginning of Dr. No. And so that's a cool, like, we started from scratch and now we got to here. Now we got to a thing that I recognize. It's a pattern that I recognize. And as an engineer, I really enjoy patterns and I really enjoy that fulfillment of those setups. It's setup payoff. So we've had 3 films of setup essentially. And at the very end of Skyfall, we get the payoff of, we have an established M character, we have an established Moneypenny character, we have an established James Bond character, and then, we at that point we have an established Q character. So it's like, yeah, it's a version of things that happened in the 60s and 70s and on, but it's not the same, but it's also relative. It's also relating to that. So if we start from scratch again, like, is it gonna have as much resonance when we get to that point with this new character? I don't know. Or is it just gonna be like, oh look, they're back in M's office again for the 18 zillionth time, setting it up like it's a new thing. I don't know. I'm interested to see what they do with it, but I'm also excited because there's probably things that I can't think of that maybe people are already thinking of. So I want to see that.
Well, that's the fun of it. I think
Yeah.
that to try to predict what a screenwriter can come up with is near impossible because they always come up with something I'm like, wow, I would have never thought of that. So I think that they are having a really good time with whatever's happening from this point on. They're probably giddy with the joy of knowing that it's all new or can be new again, or how to bridge the gap between what you're talking about, reestablishing the character and bringing you through to 4 or 5 films and certain patterns and certain motifs that you're used to. How we reinvent that is probably invigorating for those writers. So I'm willing to think that they can, and I'm willing to be excited about how they're going to do it. And so far, so good. So I think they can do it.
We didn't talk about Phoebe Waller-Bridge, but she was brought in as somewhat of a script doctor, I guess. And she did get a screenplay credit or a co-screenplay writer credit. So it's hard to tell with these movies where there's a writer's room, essentially. There's multiple people passing it back and forth, and it's a huge system that develops these types of things.
But maybe that's why we're talking about the subversion of what we're expecting from the female character in the Bond film. Maybe she's the one who says she needs to walk across the room, invite him in, and you're expecting one thing, and then she takes off her weave, and then you're like, wait, what's going on here?
Yeah.
And yeah, there's a sensitivity to this film that I'm not saying men can't write, but maybe it's because there is a woman in the room that he has a daughter. Who would have thunk it? I don't know who thought that up. I don't know how that all played out. I don't know what. Maybe Phoebe Waller. I just lost her name. Say her name again to me.
Phoebe Waller-Bridge.
Yeah, I always get her mixed up with the name of that singer. Anyway,
Phoebe Bridgers.
Yes. Anyway, Fleabag. I've seen Fleabag and I loved it.
It's so good.
I loved it.
Oh,
I'm getting a subscription to the National Theater because they show all of their shows. And I think that's still up there. And I think there's a new Olivia Colman. Yeah, I just watched the new Nathan Lane, Andrew Garfield, Angels in America.
Oh, you told me about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Stunning to watch again. Anyway, so I like her. So I don't know, maybe she came in and said, oh, maybe that's a little too sensitive, because she does have a edge to her. So maybe she's the one who brought it back. Who knows? I don't know.
I'm sure they were better because of her, though. Everything was better because of her, yeah.
No doubt. And also you need that perspective. You need a female's perspective when it comes to, I don't think they mean it to be misogynistic after a certain point in the James Bond franchise, but you have to be careful of that. So bringing another voice in there to say, yeah, that's a little on the edge, or no, push that, is a good thing. So did I sense it? Maybe not. But now that you say it, maybe. So we'll see.
All right. Batman trailer, go.
I don't want to say anything bad because you don't know, but I just didn't get the same sense from this trailer as I got from the first one, that it's really anything different. It's a different guy playing him. It's a different costume. It's a different, I'm just hoping the approach is new, but I love Batman. So I cannot be objective about it. I'm just glad they're putting another version on the screen. There was something more romantic, sensitive, because you see a lot of Catwoman, a lot of Batman,
and Penguin too, but no Riddler.
Right, because I don't think he's going to look like what we're expecting him to look like. You do see Paul Dano in the beginning of the trailer. That's him. Put your hands up. That seemed all normal. That seemed just like, okay, I'm not getting the film noir feel that everybody's saying that it is. I'm not getting any of that. I don't know if you can get that from a trailer. I do have a good sense when it comes to trailers. I I don't like the costume.
Oh,
And maybe I'll get
Batman's
used to it.
costume.
Yeah, maybe I'll get used to it. I'm sure I will. And I'm sure they're going to make it, they're going to explain it because it's very specific. You know how he kind of has the points on his glove
Yeah.
that he's used in
gauntlet?
Christian
Mhm.
Bale? Yeah, the gauntlet, right. They look like they're like belts or canvas military belts. Or
Huh.
not canvas, whatever that military.
It's like the fabric part of the belt that's
Yeah,
sticking out.
Yes. Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
And those are the three prongs that in the Christian Bale movie are used to scar the Joker, right?
Yeah.
And to stop him when he's going over the ridge in the first movie and
Yep.
all that other stuff. So they gave purpose to that because that's always been part of the Batman costume. I'm not sure if this has purpose or not. I'm not counting it out. And you want to know what my biggest? It's so silly. It's so silly. And I know I'm silly, but I'm going to say it anyway. You know what my biggest disappointment in the trailer was? Was the cappuccino with the question mark in it.
Okay.
The question mark looked like, it just looked like a question mark from one of those ABC sets that you can magnetize and put on your refrigerator for
did
your
you
little
want?
kid to.
Did you want like Batman
So-
Forever question mark, or what did you want?
It looks way more like a Batman Forever question mark than it doesn't have an edge to it.
Did you notice it had a green saucer, like a green circle around the saucer, and the cup itself had a green circle around it? So it's green.
Yes, I did.
There's green in there.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But no. I love the Riddler. The Riddler is my favorite Batman villain. Always has been, always will. And we've talked about this. I think he's way more dangerous than we give him credit for, and I think that he's unexpectedly dangerous, and he doesn't really care. Anyway, there's a shot of Bruce Wayne or Robert Pattinson as Bruce Wayne standing on top of a pattern with these really kind of David Fincher 7 looking symbols. Okay. And there is a question mark in that. And I'm not saying you could do it or it could be done. It just seems simplified. It didn't match up with what I was expecting based on the first trailer and the rest of that trailer. I know it's silly, but you asked.
No, I'm interested. Yeah.
It's just something that it just didn't look like it fit into the style of the film. And it almost struck me as, is that in the movie, or did they do that for the trailer?
Yeah.
Because they do that thing where they show you one trailer and they show you why a line is really being used. And then in this one, they use the same line, but in a different sense. Because she says, who's underneath that mask? I'm vengeance. But that's not what happens in the first trailer.
Mm-hmm.
The first trailer, he beats the hell out of that guy. And he's like, who are you, man? I'm vengeance. So I think they're tricking us. And I also think they're not showing us a lot of stuff purposefully, which I'm good with. So overall, I'm excited, but we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was not expecting that accent out of Colin Farrell's Penguin, but yeah, he's kind of going for it. And I don't know.
That
yeah.
shot though, when I got you,
Yeah.
and then you see the Batmobile or whatever it's considered now, the
Batmo rod, the Bat Hot Rod, the Bat Rod. That could
and
be
you
bad.
see Colin Farrell looking through the headrest of the
Yep.
car. That was a cool shot. And
Yeah.
then the upside down shot of Batman walking, very cool. Very cool. So I'm sure it's going to be interesting. We'll see.
Yeah, time will tell. I'm sure there's going to be other trailers too. That was a long trailer, but when does it come out? Do you know when it comes out?
I think it said March of 2022.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. There's going to be another trailer, but yeah. All right. Well, so you can check us out on the web at actorandengineer.com. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/actorandengineer. You can tweet us at actorengineer, and we're on YouTube. Just search for the Actor and the Engineer podcast. I'll see you next time.